the raw moment for what it is when you write something with just an acoustic and a vocal, or just a piano and a vocal. I've always been attracted to that sound anyway, but specifically with this album, I think before I tried to figure out what sound or like what kind of direction I was going to go in, and just nothing was like, it's not that it sounded bad, I was just like, this is cool, but it's just, it wasn't sitting in my gut like, this is it. And I had a couple of conversations with JLS, and then I had in my head, like, my friend Nath would record this amazing, just super simplistic and beautiful, and he plays acoustic amazing as well, so maybe some tracks he can like add little bits on and we can like double up. But yeah, it's sometimes we can overcomplicate it and want to make it sound bigger or full, or like you said, like the bridge should build it here, when actually your vocal and one instrument can do that itself if you do it to like let the emotion and the raw feel of the song, if you let it speak for itself.
Yeah. And I feel like, I suppose that is hard though, like the element of letting it speak for itself, because part of that, and I know I speak about it so much so it almost seems gimmicky, but the whole thing about vulnerability, where you're like, particularly on this project, and I think it also comes across in your other songs, where it feels like, it doesn't feel like you're relying on the music. It feels like the music is, and I might even suggest that
I'm just like, what are you gonna say?
It might be linked to your experience leading worship, I think.
Probably.
Because I think what it's certainly worship does for me, or how I perceive worship, is you're ushering people into a space. And what that looks like is less trying to control the space, but rather trying to encourage people to sort of give into the space. That makes sense. And particularly with music and vulnerable music, I think it's similar to what you're saying, where it's like you just let it speak for itself. You're not trying to, I'm gonna sing it in this way so it evokes this. It's like, look, I'm just gonna do my best to tell that truth as honestly as possible, that hopefully it connects with whatever's in the other person, that's like, I need to listen to this music. Or particularly, what's the name of the song you did with Josh?
There's two, but The Void was the main one, the title track of the album. That
song particularly, whenever I listen to it, I do have that feeling of like, almost like what I was saying about music to think to.
Yeah.
It's not trying to fight for your attention in the same way that it's that whole idea of like a confident person isn't trying to get your attention. They're not trying to be the loudest person in the room. They're not trying to, they're just doing their thing. And in almost like in hopes or in trusting that that's going to communicate and the right people are going to gravitate towards it. And the music feels like that. It feels like I'm not trying to make the best produced song. I'm not trying to be the cleanest. I'm not trying to be simple. I'm just trying, in fact, to get it out.
I think I like, even with my album, I like that some of them are not to click. Like, some of them, like, you can hear my vocal get emotional, but like you could probably change it to make the vocal sound better. But then you lose the essence of
the grit,
the grit. Or the like slight odd like change on the guitar. It kind of makes
it feels real. It feels,
and that's
like,
what I wanted. But it's funny because when I was doing it, I was like, I could probably make it sound better. And there was something that just sat in me that was like, actually, this reflects life to me. Like, life is not perfect.
For sure.
And that's what I think I wanted.
And it's kind of ironic considering your voice is freaking stunning. So most people hearing it wouldn't pick up on what you would class as the imperfections in it. But at the same time, another thought that just popped into my head is, I almost feel like the way we're analyzing it, it's making it obvious that music has almost like two sides to it, where it's like there's music, which is the art of making music, and then there is the storytelling music side, which is breaking out of the art form into almost like, oh, the art form has given me the arsenal of tools that I need, and now I'm just going to channel those tools when I need them unapologetically, which is what I love.
I was about to say, I think I just swayed towards the storytelling side,
which I
like naturally.
And I feel like that's where like the life is, which is why I'm so excited about this project. But I'm also like slightly pissed that I wasn't the one that wrote these songs. It's because it does feel like it feels like a story that I get to sit in, but also a story that is familiar without being cliche. Or a non-cliche take on a familiar place. Which
why do you think that is?
I think it's that realness. It's the fact that the cycle is like, we're doing good and then we're doing shit. We're doing good. But in a sense, that feeling of not doing great is so familiar to us. I feel like most people could relate with either being in a depressive state or being anxious or not feeling like themselves, feeling like they've lost themselves, or like any one of these things we can pick. A lot of people will be like, I felt like that. But if we turn around and we're like, do you know what love feels like? All of a sudden that pool of people is like, do you know what it feels like to be totally at peace with yourself? Like, it's a lot less familiar to be truly happy, whereas being
to be truly sad
being truly sad, I feel like most people
so dark
get that. But then the problem with it is because most people get it, there's not much nuance in the way it's expressed, which is why I then gravitate to your work, because it feels like you're not trying to you're not saying I'm sad and this is how I'm sad. You're being like, this is how I feel, and you're doing it in the most Sophia way possible.
What's the Sophia way possible?
What?
You said doing it in the most Sophia way possible. I was like, what's the Sophia way?
I don't know.
I know.
It's
I want to know that way. I do it apparently.
Well,
No, I get you. It's funny because I don't go into writing a song thinking I'm going to write a dark song or I'm going to even process how I'm feeling. A lot of the time I just fiddle around with chords and suddenly
something
sticks. Or like, it sounds crazy, but the way I write songs is a lot of the time I'm just doodling around cleaning the house or even sitting on the loo or something, and I sing something out and I went, oh, I meant that. And then I'm like, where's my phone? And I do a tiny little voice note, and then I like pick up the guitar and try and figure it out, and I'm like, and then all this stuff starts coming out and I'm like, I don't know where this came from. This is cool and it's a really good song. And then I literally slightly sing it and cry to it because I'm like, oh, this was my therapy. This was my what's the word?
Almost like an outlet.
This was my outlet of blah.
I think we're finding another reason why that realness exists is because, and I definitely think it comes across, is it doesn't feel contrived. It doesn't feel like you went into a studio and was like, I want to write a song. It feels like almost, again, this might sound cliche, but it feels like the song presented itself to you.
Oh yeah,
like
they do a lot and they're usually the best songs, which makes me feel like I've kind of cheated the process. Like, people have worked out, but then my brain goes, it's because I just write lots of stuff that isn't necessarily great. I just chuck them all out there and then suddenly one just comes to me and I'm like, oh, thank you.
But what you said about like, I meant that, I think that's so good because a lot of times in the chaos of all of it, it's hard to truly mean it, or it's hard to know if you truly mean it. And so in order to actually be able to tell that, you need to be like, okay, I had no intention of doing this. And then out of nowhere this appeared and I'm like, oh, that strikes a chord. And usually for me, because most of my stuff is like freestyle into a mic, and then something hits, and then I'm like, oh,
that's it.
We might have found.
It's like you're waiting for your soul to speak.
Yeah.
It's like this, like, what's going on in there? I don't know. Let's just say some stuff.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you're like,
and then it starts snowballing from there. It's like,
and to be honest, completely, that's also the worship space. Like that you were saying before, just like, I don't know if it's because you like do it off worship, and my brain goes, actually in that space the same thing happens. If you're used to kind of like spontaneous worship environments, you're singing a song that other people have like fought for. They've written a song, they've got this thing out, and then when you're in that space of like, you're basically writing a song live. When stuff just comes out and you're like, oh, this is what my soul just needs to say right now. And that's how it can connect with the room, because really you're going somewhere that's happening within you, and either I think it's because it's happening in the room and I'm choosing to partner with it, or I hope that people will choose to partner with what's going on like with me, and I sense that and what I feel Spirit is doing. In one of the Honest Artist sessions, I can remember I was talking about, actually I think it was the second official one, and I was talking about like the idea that telling your story, one thing I'd learned last year was the importance of telling my story is that it's a pointer, it's like a GPS signal that says this is where I am, and then people get to listen to that and go, oh, I recognize these buildings, I recognize these buildings. Like, this is where I am in relation to you. I love that concept.
You telling your story helps me understand
that's where I am too.
Exactly. And
it's like the puzzle pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And first of all, I think it's freaking beautiful, but something that feels like it's lingering, because I have it, is how are you dealing with the feeling of not commercializing, selling your vulnerability.
My favorite thing. Can you tell? That's the thing. I think, well, I don't know if it scares me the most. I think having someone else read into what you're, because everyone will hear a song differently, your art differently. They will filter it through their system. So although, like you said, on the GPS it helps them, but they may go, oh, it's that building, and I'm like, no, I was trying to show you that building. Actually, we're not in the set, like, but that's okay as long as it impacts them in some way. If we're talking about commercializing, as in like selling, and people kind of, I don't know, I struggle with that thought. I have never done it for that reason, so the concept I struggle with.
The only reason I asked is because when I put out David Complex, it was the first time that I had got the CDs printed, and I was trying to figure out pricing for it. And every price I picked was wrong. Like, going off of that spirit sense or inner feeling, I was like, doesn't feel right. And all of a sudden, Zero felt the most real.
So for you to just give it to people,
I felt very conflicted, because for a long time, the notion of the world or the environment is make it make sense. Like what you're doing needs to. I've
had to price up CDs before, but I don't know, like.
Oh, I'm definitely not making a premise for artists to put their music out for free, but with this new album coming up, I've been grappling with that feeling, because I suppose it's a little bit of imposter syndrome. Because it's that feeling of like, oh, who am I to do this, and who am I to demand a certain amount for the vulnerability I spent the last 2-3 years churning out. And
well, it does, if you think about that and your process, it costs you something. It costs you your time, it costs you your emotions,
my sanity,
your sanity, it costs you energy, sleep sometimes,
big parts of myself, because really that writing process is kind of like a carving. It's like you're trying to etch it away at the stone, and it holds so much value, but then that's why I think it's so difficult to put a price on it. But I don't think anything will ever
it's hard making money from doing something you love,
Yeah.
because then you're always questioning,
Yeah.
like,
It feels like it
am I
it
doing this for
smokes
the money,
your
or
vision.
even like you're just like, I don't want this to seem like I want the attention.
Yeah.
Like like that's a huge thing I struggle with a lot, and I'm like, but I know this is what I was made to do, because it's the thing I know I do best, and the thing I love. Like, it makes me feel alive.
Yeah.
So why would I not? But then something that has a cost value to something that makes you come alive is,
Yeah.
it's a fine line.
But recently I was listening to something, and the guy said, what is music to you? And the whole thing was, they were getting at music is technically an experience.
Yeah.
So he was getting at it from the perspective of, so if you look around, everything is built, most things are built around selling you an experience. It's
Yeah,
like
that's
theme
true.
parks, going to dinner,
Food, yeah.
like all of these things, they're selling you an experience, and it's
Which is art in itself.
yeah,
If you think about it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And then for us, we are going into ourselves to sell what could be seen, I suppose, arguably, as like one of the ultimate experiences, which is not just an experience that lets people step away from their world, but actually see themselves.
Yeah.
Like almost like holding up a mirror and inviting people to look at that. And I suppose that has been doing a lot for me as far as getting comfortable with the idea of being blessed by my blessings. It's that whole idea. And I suppose I also got reminded of that verse in the Bible where it's like, out of your belly flows rivers of living water. And in my head, I'm visualizing it very much as the true expression of what we are. Where it's like, once we allow that speak through, it only becomes rivers of living water once it's, because in a sense, a river would impact the surrounding, the landscape,
and it changes
exactly.
direction,
And so us being able to share in that way, in that really honest and brutal way, starts like triggering so
like,
many.
It's so true. It's like, I think it's authenticity, like, that drives it. When you're like truly vulnerable and authentic and connect with your true self, that's when it feels like things
Here
start
it is.
it's open. The door is popped open. Ta-da.
A question that I've never known how to pose it without it feeling like a question.
Okay.
But what how are you doing in your journey of dealing with imposter syndrome?
It's funny because I have this weird, like you said, this is a fine line between, this is what I'm made to do, I can't do anything else, between, I'm just like, I taught myself piano and guitar when I was like 13, and so I don't actually, if people ask me to play, I'm like, so what are you playing? I'm just like, I have watched someone and played a chord, but like, I couldn't play in a band, because if they're just like, go to G and E and F, I'm like, and so so there's that, I think, is difficult, and I don't know, I ignore it most of the time if I can. Articulate, that's the word.
That's it. It's a good word.
It's a good word to articulate it. What are you gonna say?
I suppose in my head, the reason why I'm curious about other artists' experience of it is, one of the biggest things that helped my dealing with imposter syndrome was realizing that it wasn't novel to me, and it was something that was part of the trip. It's almost like
it's part of the journey. Hello, imposter syndrome. Nice to meet you.
It's kind of
We're
like
on the way.
So it's almost akin to like feeling frustrated with like, the road is so boring. Why is the trip to Bognor just so long and it's so samey? And you're like, well, if you want to get to Bognor Regis, you're gonna have to go through one road or another.
Good old bloody
So
Bognor Regis.
it kind of feels the same with like writing or like creating or really anything that has a goal at the end of it. It's like, oh, if you want to get to where you need to be,
if you want to get to level 50
fight the
at
dragons,
level
the demons,
level 48 and 9, you're gonna meet Mr. Imposter Syndrome.
You're definitely, for sure. And I'm always curious to see if people have found ways of sedating or masking the voice, or maybe even using it to their advantage.
Yes. Okay. So now I feel like, now that you've explained what I think my process, it's funny because I've walked into rooms where I'm like, okay, all the big people are here. They know their stuff. What am I doing? I'm like, who am I to be in this room? And then at the same time, I find this really funny. Like I said, fine line. Is there's another part of me of just like, I want you to see me and to know like what I can bring to the table. You know, there's this weird like in between of, I have something too, but I don't know if I probably am not as great as you, or you know, there's this weird, but you're just like, you're also wanting to be like, hi, I'm great, trust me.
I'm great,
please.
Hi, great, I'm Nano.
Nice to meet you. And
no, for sure.
And I remember talking to a friend about it, and it being like, it's this weird thing that happens inside you when you're like, I don't feel like I belong here, but I've never felt like I should be anywhere else. And
it's a hell of a thing to grapple with.
And how do you like fight the fact of, I'm just like, I don't want to like, I'm not here for their attention or to tell them how great I am, but then I do know that I'm great, but then I don't feel like maybe I'm meant to be here at the same time. Maybe I've got it wrong. But I think it's actually a really interesting place to be and to process that, and I've found being present in it the most important thing, to be like, oh, all these feelings, all these little people like that I can hear like rummaging around in that brain of mine. I'm like, oh, let's just take a couple of deep breaths. That may seem like really practical, but I'm just being like, I'm here. Okay, so who's in the room? And they're them and I'm me, and really they're a human being as much as I'm a human being. They have more experience of music and life, but we could also change places right now. And I could have been the one that had the 40-year journey of making music and it being heard by the world, and they could be that person, like only having your small group of people listen to your songs and maybe a bit further beyond that, and then suddenly it kind of puts you in someone else's shoes and being like, oh, they probably just want, I like, if I was actually them, I'd want to get to know other people and not like and you can tell they're humble people as well. If they are those kind of people, I've met humble people, which is really nice. And I'm actually like, if I do become your version of success, or what people say success looks like, then I want to be how you're being. And there's a sense of humanity in it, and just being present and being like, I'm a human, they're a human, let's just go back to basics. Simplicity at the core. We're people who make music. We have to cut now. We've run out of time.
Your appointment.
I have an appointment.
But
that was very rambled. But you get what I'm trying to say.
I get what you're trying to say. I do. And
I feel like we could carry on for hours.
I think we can. I think that's why it's good to always have like
we could do a take 2.
We can.
Let's do a take 2. We'll be back.
Lituation. If you've enjoyed anything you've heard, like, comment, share, follow.
Click.
Because we're living this real life.
See you later.
Alligator.